up, fight fans from all around the world? I am your fight goddess, Chris Baldwin, and we are back in the war room today. I'm here with my sister, Miss Malissa Smith. She is a women's boxing historian and a best-selling author, I can say. And my boy, he is an award-winning sports writer, Mr. Eddie Goldman. And now we are going to kick off this edition today with the biggest boxing news of the year. Okay. No, it's not that Broner got his tooth knocked out in his loss against Blair Cobb. No, the biggest boxing news of the year is Melissa's latest book,
Yay!
The Promise of Women's Boxing, a momentous new era for the sweet science, with forward by Claressa Shields. And that book is on sale right now on Amazon. You guys have to go to Barnes and Noble or online at Rowan and Littlefield. And there's going to be a book launch party at Gleason's on June 15th, right, Melissa, in Brooklyn?
Yes, there is.
All right,
starting at 7:00. So I'm excited.
I'm going to throw in some applause sound effects right here.
Thank you.
And actually, we're going to kick it off to you today, Melissa, just to talk a little bit about your book. Give us a rundown. What does it feel like to have a #1 bestseller in the boxing on Amazon? What does that feel like?
That was crazy. The first 3 days, it was #1 for new book releases. I was kicking Bill O'Reilly's butt.
Yes.
Why he had to do a boxing book at all, I'll never understand it. Apparently, he has some book about celebrities, and he talks about a couple of boxers. So they list it as a boxing book. That gets the credit. But anyway, that was really exciting. I think it's down to 3 or 4 copies left at Amazon.
Wow.
So it's really done well. And I am so appreciative of the folks who've,
Right.
gone on to Amazon and purchased it, or on any of the other outlets. I know that it's selling in the UK as well, because I have some friends from the UK who've shown me their books.
Excellent.
Just very, very exciting. And I'm just, I'm levitating, to tell you the truth.
Right.
I didn't think it was going to feel quite this good. And I'm more to the point, I'm just excited that as this gets into the hands of people and as they read it, they will begin to see just how amazing these female athletes are, what they do every day in and day out to stay in shape, to be able to fight at all. How, even as late as, 5 years ago, there was no $1 million fights, right? That only happened in 2022. So, while we really applaud what Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano achieved on April 30th, 2022 in their main event fight at Madison Square Garden, there's haven't been very many $1 million fights after that, really only 1 or 2. So we still have so much more to go in terms of what can be achieved for the sport. It's certainly a good start, but we really have to ensure that they're getting placements on cards and real opportunities for support from really excellent opportunities as amateurs on through being signed and being given, the same kind of sweetheart deals that their counterpart, their male prospects are getting, which is payment for their training, payment, all of those kinds of things, being able to really go to a camp, not having camp being, the extra hours in the day they sandwich in between working. So, when we see that, we'll see more parity in the sport. And I just hope that my book helps to illustrate some of the struggles and the challenges that women continue to face. And, by reading through that, really start to think through how to make it better for everybody, all boxers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. I basically think it traces, this is the second book that you've written on this. So the earlier part, I think through 2012, you go to in much more depth about that history, but you summarize some of the earlier history at the beginning of this book and then take us up to date until it was published. And it just shows the development. It's sort of spiraling. It's not a straight line up. There's been ups and downs and ups and downs that we we've known about. I mean, frankly, a lot of us thought in the early 2000s with Layla Ali getting a tremendous amount of attention. I still have the old TV guide with Layla Ali and Jackie Fraser Lied on the cover. If people may not remember, TV Guide sold millions and millions of copies. It was either the number one or two largest circulation magazine in America. People
Wow.
relied on it before digital cable boxes and TV listings were on the internet and all that type of thing. And so, of course, before social media was out anything but in its infancy. And that to get on the cover of TV Guide was tremendous. And then it dipped, and with the introduction of women's boxing to the Olympics, the last Olympic sport, by the way, to add a women's division in 2012, then it started to take off because you had a series of Olympians, Olympic champions and Olympic medalists and amateur champions who had much better training than the women from before entering the sport. And now we have, of course, Claressa Shields, Katie Taylor, and Lauren Price, and so many different others that are there. And this takes us up to that, and you really understand the history. And I think it's particularly important in the boxing business because there's still a lot of old fossils. And when I use the term fossil, I don't necessarily mean by age. I mean by their outlook, their social outlook, and their brain. You have a lot of the old guard, the old fossils, still basically talking down women's boxing and saying this and saying that, even to the point where I'm not even going to name the organization. One of the so-called writers' organizations just gave a major reward to one of these fossils who always just throws shit onto women's boxing. And supposedly he's an expert on boxing. I would give him, for some of the stuff he said, our Uncle Roger award for don't know shit about.
Right.
But
Yeah.
this book is essential to really understand that. And of course, when you know how book publications work, there's a cutoff point, and you have to end it at some point, even though the story is going on. And there have been a lot of more recent developments, some in today, and some in the past couple of weeks, that would, I don't know if you, Melissa, if you plan to write a third book, but or if you're going to give that task to somebody else or whatever, but the material is there. And frankly, what I'm looking forward to is a chapter along the lines of, which cannot be written today, how Saudi Arabia took over women's boxing like they took over heavyweight boxing. Because they're bankrolling the biggest fights all around the world, not only in Riyadh and Jeddah, but now coming up in Los Angeles and in London. And they're talking about running fights in Germany and in China under the Riyadh Season banner, which would be advertisements for that event. And they have said, Turkey Al-Sheikh has said, they're going to have a women's fight on their Riyadh card in October. Okay, we don't have anything definite for that card, except they say they're going to finally have Beterbiev and Bivol fight on that October card, because that was postponed because Beterbiev was injured from their originally planned June 1st date. So that's going to be a major card, having the two undefeated light heavyweight champions fight an undisputed bout. And there are other major cards. They've had very big fights on them. What are they going to do? Are they actually going to do that? I think we should really be lobbying for that, because the absence of women's fights on what's been announced so far for August 3rd in Los Angeles, where they've announced the card, is completely unacceptable. And September 21st in London, none of that card is set. There's a lot of talk Joshua's going to be on it again. We don't know against whom, but whatever happens, that's going to be primarily put together by Matchroom and Queensberry and other promoters as well, all of whom have major women fighters already signed to them. So you don't even have to deal with the politics if you're dealing with Matchroom and Queensberry. So they really have to start stepping up to do that, because boxing is just such a dinosaur. It loses its popularity, and it doesn't see how its loss in popularity is related to this dinosaur conservative thinking, which other sports took too long to realize. And look what's happening in basketball now. Basketball was really late in bringing women to prominence, and now again, I don't follow basketball, so it's hard for me to talk about it. But what I see in the general sports media, tons of articles about women's basketball now, both on the professional and college level, and big discussion of who's on the U.S. Olympic women's basketball team and all of that. You should be having that about boxing too, but they're stuck with these misogynists, these old fossils running things, and they have to be called out. The day is done. They've ruined boxing enough. Let's move beyond them. And I don't care if it's age. I don't care if you're 100 years old or 10 years old or whatever. It's what your thinking is, and let's move beyond the old guard in boxing. That this misogyny is just one aspect of how it's just completely marginalized the sport.
Yeah. Melissa, what do you think about the Saudis taking over women's boxing?
Show me.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing cards, but
we, yes, they are starting to make an investment in their own internal amateur boxing. I think that's great. They're doing it for men and for women, and they're giving some parity there. And I think that's fantastic. And I applaud that. As distinct from, let's say, Cuba, that only just began allowing women like 2 years ago. Saudi Arabia has had women on its team for some time. It is also very there are also strong amateur teams in other parts of the Middle East. But until I actually see that there is a women's bout of serious measure, a championship bout, I can't really believe it. In terms of lobbying, absolutely. I'm a pain in the butt on Twitter, in the sense of always calling it out and always saying, hey, guys, hello. Mm-hmm. It was 5x5. Why wasn't there a fifth fight why wasn't one of those a woman? No reason not to. So yes, they have had women fight. We've talked about that on the show before. There was a pro amateur fight card that had a Saudi woman on it. We know that Ramla Ali fought there 2 years ago, but nothing since. And
no, the one that I found, it was exactly. It was a pro fight with Al Naimi, right, where she won, but it was on the undercard of the Jake Paul and Tommy Fury, and it didn't get much attention, but it was really promoted in Saudi Arabia as the first woman professional Saudi boxer. Well, and it was promoted by Rashid Al Khamis, the vice president of the Saudi Boxing Federation, really pushed that. Now it looks like that Al Naimi is not the greatest fighter in the world. That's not the issue.
It doesn't matter that she's not a great fighter. That as you say, that is not the issue. The issue is they actually had a fight. Well, that's great. So now, I mean,
that was almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, and
a year and a half ago.
We have the Saudis saying, "Hey, we're gonna save boxing, right? We got money, we got place. They're trying to eliminate some of that political nonsense between different promotional organizations. They're kind of like they don't favor one over the other. They have cards where they have 4 or 5 different promoters on them that don't traditionally get along. Right. They don't play nicely together. that's great. But if you don't put women on cards, it's meaningless in my estimation, because, as we have also talked about on this show many times, boxing is in a lot of trouble, especially in the United States. There's really no consistent promotion. There's so many factors that are pushing the primacy that boxing once had as a combat sport into a niche of a niche. And one of the things that can really turn that around are the excitement of these female bouts. Women who box have really loyal fan bases that always show up. They're the ones that are selling out the tickets. That's been happening for years and continues to happen on these local club shows. That then translates when you go up the line and start to bring them into bigger arenas to put them on fight cards. They happily sell their tickets because they want to be on the card. And that puts fans in the seats. That puts people who really care about these athletes giving the eyeballs to those fights. And by not understanding, as Eddie says, by having that fossil mentality, you are cutting off your own opportunity to grow the sport. This is an entertainment business, right? It's boxing. We all feel so many emotions about it, especially, from where we sit as writers, as thinkers about the sport. But those opportunities are there. The fans can be there. You just have to give them the product that's exciting.
Right.
And by constantly denigrating it, it makes no sense.
Right.
In terms of the bottom line, it makes no sense in terms of how to give opportunity in a sport that really is craving opportunity, because it's losing. Here in particular in America, it is losing right now. It's not on the local club level. There's a lot of fights going on. And a lot of these shows have 1, 2, 3, sometimes 3 women fighting. But it's not enough if you can't then bump it up into the visible area, that space above where the champions are, where the belts are, where the larger promoters are, and importantly, where you have exposure on media that is across a national or across international boundaries. I probably know more about British club fighters than I do American club fighters, because I can see the British club fighters, right? They're on DAZN.
Yeah,
they're getting promoted on a Sunday afternoon, or I watch a boxer card on a Sunday. I know more about their young guys than anybody else.
Peacock.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm watching it on Peacock
or YouTube,
or even ESPN will show some British cards from time to time. So I know about their prospects more than I know about American prospects.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. I mean, tonight you got Nisa Rodriguez, who is the pride in New York. She's an amateur, a really well decorated amateur. She's a cop with NYPD, and she's fighting tonight in her second fight. It's on a top ranked card at Madison Square Garden. You can best believe she sold out her tickets.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And here's the thing about her. Last night was a charity event for basically New York City's cops, firefighters, EMTs, and sort of the first responders amateur fight show. She was literally working somebody's corner last night on fight night. So, I mean, how do you not understand how she is a star? She'll win. She'll do really well. You want her as one of your fighters that you're putting out there and promoting and putting on television. You want her on those cards. You want that opportunity, because that's a winning person, as a human being. So again, the fact that most of the time these fighters never get an opportunity, I just shake my head.
Yeah.
And I all credit to her manager for really pushing it. And he's now managing Mio Yoshida. And I hear that, there's some potential for some big things in the offing for her. And precisely to push this, to say, listen, you've got gold here. These are great stories. I mean, here you have a woman comes from Japan to go train in Gleason's gym, single mother, beautiful child. I mean, this stuff writes itself. Thank goodness Lou DiBella, has at least been promoting her, but geez.
Well, my thought is if these promoters and, when we talk about the Saudis investing in women's boxing, if you're not putting up the money, like you said, to put these women through training camps, to sponsor them, to give them sponsorship dollars, then you are still marginalizing the women.
Absolutely.
I don't care what you say out in public, the women are still being marginalized because money talks. And that's the only way they're going to get promoted is if you do the work.
Listen, in my book, I write about, my book essentially ends on the summer fight between Heather Hardy and Amanda Serrano. And my point of that was to show the contrast of what happens when you make it somehow and when you're struggling. And I tell the story about how Heather, and I may have told it here before, about how it was only in her last month of training for that fight that she didn't have to work. Damn. And that's because the comedian CJ, that's true story, Louis C.K., who knows her, was in a discussion with her in June of 2023, and it somehow got around that she was working. And he said, what? How much of a check do you need so you don't have to work in July, Heather? And he gave her the money so she could actually just train.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of CK because, he's a little perv, but, good for him. Yeah,
but
good for him.
The point was, it didn't come from promotions. It didn't come from anything else. It was a personal check from a human being who said, I got some cash. I can spare this. I can support you for a month so you can just tell your clients, I'm on a hiatus. Yeah. I'm getting ready. That was camp.
Wow.
Right.
That is crazy.
But that's the truth. That's where women are. It's not, Cecilia Brækhus, yes, she goes to real camp, she's out in the mountains with Abel Sanchez. Katie Taylor's in real camp, Amanda Serrano is now able to have real camp, but what is that? 4, 5, 10 women out of how many?
Right.
It's just life. So you're right.
So look, let's, speaking of the heavyweights, we're going to get to the men boxers in a minute, Eddie, but I want to hear that I just heard Claressa Shields is moving up to heavyweight. And
sort of.
Yeah. Sort of. Okay, explain that to me because I don't really, they're confusing.
There are basically after super middleweight, which is 165 pounds, 68 pounds.
Okay.
You get into 2 more weight classes. One is light heavyweight at 175 pounds. And the other is heavyweight, which is 200 pounds or more. Now, she will be fighting a Canadian fighter named Vanessa Lepage-Janice. Sorry if I've destroyed the name. My apologies. She is a 7-1 fighter. She's won by 2 KOs and was knocked out herself in a fight. And she is the current WBC World Heavy Champion, having won that honor in March of 2024. Not all of them. I mean, basically, currently at the heavyweight, there's only 2 champions right now. There's Vanessa and Lani Daniels, who's I think she's out of Australia, I believe. And then you have light heavyweight, which has 4 vacant titles.
Wow.
That's really 3. WBA, WBC, and WBO are all vacant. And Lani Daniels is also the light heavyweight champion. So that means that when she fought for the championship, she had to be under 175 pounds. But she contested for both belts. So she's considered the heavyweight champ and the light heavyweight champ because she fought for both belts and was under 175 pounds.
Oh my goodness. So is Claressa going to get both those belts if she wins?
So Claressa is going to fight Vanessa Lepage. She's going to fight for the WBC World Heavy, which is apparently vacant. I don't know how that happened, but
The WBC.
yeah,
It's boxing.
it's boxing.
It's
So
boxing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Vanessa is WBC. My apologies. I'm looking at a table right now, so
So
please,
Claressa's opponent is WBA.
Claressa's opponent is the WBC World Heavy.
WBC.
She just won that.
Okay.
Sorry, in March. They are also fighting for the WBA interim World Light Heavy. I don't know why it's interim, because as far as I know, it's vacant. And they're fighting for the WBO World Light Heavy, which is a vacant title. So they're fighting for 2 weight classes, for World Heavy and World Light Heavy, which means they have to come in at 175 pounds.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Right. To qualify for the light heavy, you got to be at 175 or less.
175 pounds.
There's no catch weight.
No catch weight. As far as I know, that's
Okay.
not been negotiated. If it has, we'd hear about it at some point. So my understanding is that it's at 175. Now for Claressa, I mean, yeah, okay, new belt territory. This is like her walking around weight, or if she walks around any heavier, it's not a big deal to get down to 175.
Right.
It's a very big deal to get down to 154, right? So we'll see how this goes. She's going to be back at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. She's really going to try to sell out 12,000 tickets. We'll see how that goes, but that's
Wish
what
her
that's
the best
about.
of luck. Yeah, wish her the
Right.
best of luck.
The short answer is that the WBC considers heavyweight at 175.
Right, even though it's listed at 200 exactly.
Yes. And if here's the thing, if you just want to check it on the WBC website, WCBoxing.com, I just went to that and it says this account has been suspended.
What?
So the WBCBoxing.com, their official site.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm looking at it right now.
Contact your hosting provider for more information.
Stunned.
So
kidding me?
Maybe they've been hijacked. Maybe they've been hijacked.
Wow.
Yeah, but it gets crazier and crazier. Then on a Saturday when there are a lot of fights and discussion, that look, it just gets too much of the
that is crazy.
Well, welcome to the
welcome
world
to
of
world of boxing,
people. So anyway, 175, that's a walk in the park for Claressa. So
yeah, it should be. So
she doesn't walk around much heavier than that.
Right.
It's not a big deal for her to get to 175, and she's looking very good.
Yeah.
Her recent pictures look great, and she's in England, cheering on Savannah Marshall, who just as we came on the air won her first her pro MMA debut for PFL. Right. She got a first round stoppage after beating the crap out of the girl she fought using strikes. I just saw the last bit of it. I don't know if she used anything other than strikes or whether she kicked, or I don't think there was any ground game. The idea there is, what does Claressa call her? They're frenemies.
Right, frenemies. I get that. I get it.
Look, they're both with PFL, and the idea there is to have some showdown in MMA one of these days. So we'll see.
It's a paycheck, folks.
It's a big paycheck.
That's right. Cash
the whole story
around me.
And that's why we should tell directly, maybe write to Turkey Al Sheikh on Twitter and say, look, early this year, you had the PFL MMA show in Riyadh, in Kingdom Arena, the same place all these boxing cards are taking place. And you had Claressa Shields, the top pound-for-pound fighter, and you take all day talking about her accolades in boxing, fighting in MMA.
Yeah, exactly.
If she can fight in MMA, which is obviously not her primary sport, in which she really is still a novice, why don't you have a fight on one of your shows in boxing where she's a champion, top pound fighter,
Right.
undisputed in
Undisputed
several
times
weight
3.
classes, going for a 4th undisputed title in this show we just talked about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And give her $1
Makes
million
no sense.
at the boot.
Yeah, and give her real money for
Give her
God's
real
sake.
money. Exactly.
Ah,
That
I get-
turkey Ashi, whatever his name is, that motherfucker is full of shit.
I mean,
That's what I
show
know.
show us the car, then we can talk. But as I said, I always put his little when I do these things.
You got to remember, there's a tendency in the West to say the Saudis like it's one monolithic country of over 30 million people. There are different views, different people,
Right.
different
Yep.
factions say different things, even to the point where the interview in September with Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, was asked about some of these very repressive laws that they have. And he said, we're embarrassed by a lot of this stuff, but I just can't change the law, which is a very interesting comment from a guy that's supposed to be the de facto ruler in a monarchy. The point being, there are different things like anywhere else. There are different factions and different people react in different places. So let them know what they have to do. They want to show that their country is family friendly, that they've changed, at least in the treatment of women who were not Saudis into a lesser degree of Saudi women. So, let them know this is ridiculous. You had women fighting in all these other and competing in all these other sports except boxing. Makes no sense.
Right. Well, we're going to move on to the next segment of our show. Eddie, you have to give us a rundown on the heavyweight division. I only saw a few clips. I saw Deontay Wilder doing a windmill turn in the middle of the ring, and then he got knocked out.
It's up on, by the way,
the hell is going
the
on?
fights from main fights from that June 1st card are all up for free on Turkey Al Sheikh's YouTube page.
Oh,
yes,
Lord.
A couple of days after the pay-per-view, this is what he's been doing. A couple of days after the pay-per-view, he's been posting these on his YouTube page for free and, of course, legally. Because if you remember when the ancient days when we had HBO and Showtime Boxing, and they'd have a pay-per-view, usually a week later they'd show at least the main event.
Right.
Well, we don't have those anymore, but he's doing it on YouTube. So
because he gets paid a second time.
I think they get paid enough the first time.
No, but what I'm saying is, if they rack up over 1 million views, they get another fat paycheck from YouTube.
Oh,
yeah,
I don't know if
they're posting them.
I don't know if it goes to the fighter or what.
It doesn't. It does not.
Well, no, I don't know what the deal is. The deal that they have, their specific deal, but they had a lot of very interesting activity on that show. Bivol still fought and won against like a lesser opponent, so the attention really moved to the two main heavyweight fights, and of course the 5 versus 5, the sort of innovative competition between promoters, between Queensberry and Matchroom, which interestingly enough, Queensberry swept all 5 fights.
Oh shit!
But yeah, it's kind of very embarrassing.
That's Frank Warren's company, right?
Yes, very humiliating for Eddie Hearn, who was known to be outspoken.
Yeah.
But they actually had an important heavyweight fight on the May 18th, a supporting bout on the Fury and Usyk that escaped a lot of people's attention because of Usyk winning the undisputed title. And that was where Ajit Kabayel stopped previously unbeaten Frank Sanchez. Both were previously unbeaten. And a lot of people expected a 50-50 fight, but it was really very one-sided against Sanchez, a PBC fighter, who just got dominated over 7 rounds and was knocked out after that. And so now people are realizing that Caballero is legitimately right in the somewhere in the middle of the top 10, depending on where you rank him. But on the June 1st show, they had the 2 major heavyweight fights, which were the last 2 on the 5 versus 5 card. And they had Philip Hrgović, who was unbeaten, against Daniel Dubois. And this was for the interim IBF heavyweight belt. There's a lot of politics that's going on. Are they going to make this the full IBF belt? Are they going to strip Usyk? There's a lot of backroom stuff going on. But it was an important fight between 2 very talented fighters. And it looked like Hrgović, it was really a war from the beginning. There was no feeling out in this. And while some of it was sloppy, it was a very exciting fight to watch. And Dubois basically cut Hrgović early on, and Hrgović never fully really recovered from that. And so Dubois was able to stop him. And that was the first defeat, the first knockout, of course, that Hrgović suffered. And he was in a lot of trouble in the last several rounds. He also looked completely out of shape. He looked completely exhausted. So Hrgović had been talking a lot of shit about Dubois. Dubois is not a talker. If there's a debate in boxing, Dubois is going to lose it. But this is not the debate team. This is boxing. So Hrgović, it looks like, was really overconfident. And it showed in this fight. The last couple of rounds, he was completely out of it and not ineffective. And in the beginning of the 8th round, the referee called over the doctor, who looked at Hrgović, said he can't continue because it cuts over both eyes. And Dubois won and now has that IBF interim belt, which is a big victory. Dubois is very young. He's about 26. People forget that because he's fought so many big fights and has been in so many high-profile fights. So he possibly could be an opponent for Anthony Joshua. He possibly could be elevated to having the full IBF belt if they decide to strip Usyk. There are a lot of ifs. It's not clear that Joshua wants to fight him. I think if he fights Joshua, Joshua would be the favorite because of his experience, but I don't view it as a walkover fight by any means. And Dubois' main problems seem to have been a lack of his confidence and focus in fights, and he seems to have overcome them now in his last couple of fights with Jarrell Miller and now with Hrgović. So that was one of them, and that led up to the last fight of the night. Deontay Wilder was trying to show that his dreadful performance against Joseph Parker was just ring rust, a fluke, whatever. And so he was put up against Zhang Zhilei, the Chinese fighter. And this would not go well for Deontay Wilder at all. Really, from the beginning of the fight, he looked worse than he did in the Parker fight. Zhang is bigger and a heavier puncher, although he's slower than Parker. And he was just banging him around all over. And Wilder really hasn't had a big victory since he defeated Luis Ortiz in November of 2019. So it's been a while for Wilder, who suffered a lot of damage in those fights, particularly the last 2 with Tyson Fury. So this is a really big victory for Zhang Zhilei. Wilder, by the way, came in light again, 214.5. He's almost a cruiserweight. You get down to it. He just can't do it anymore. A lot of
Mm.
people, including people in his family, feel that he should retire. And on top of it, after he lost, the referee waved it off in the 5th round. A couple of days later, his fiancee got a temporary restraining order charging domestic violence against him. So that was granted. His fiancee that he's been with for many, many years. So that kind of activity, that could be a sign of brain damage. We don't know, or whether that's just the way he's been all along. But he's in a real mess. And he
Yeah.
hasn't announced his plans at this point. But I think promoters, networks, everybody should say, you're done. It's over. And that's where Wilder is. And for Zhang, was his career, he lost to Parker. He did knock down Parker twice, but he has a very, very low punch output. He's like 41 years old. It's still a huge payday for him fighting in China, where tens of millions of people watch his fights on TV there. And that hasn't really been utilized. So maybe one of these fights in China that the Saudi Arabians are talking about could feature Zhang. Be very interesting to see. Zhang wants the big fights. I don't think he'd stand a chance against somebody like Joshua, but he wants the big bucks before he hangs them up. But he's back in the mix at this point. And with all these major heavyweight fights, there's been a huge shakeup in the heavyweight ratings, because now Fury is no longer number one. You could argue whether he's number 2 or 3 with Joshua. Caballel is up there. Parker is up there. In what order? Again, it depends on what you want to do. Dubois is up there. That's really your top 6. And then Zhang has to be up there. Some people had Sanchez in the top 10. He's out of that now. Wilder should be out of the top 10. And you now have this situation where people are falling for all this publicity coming out of Top Rank, putting Jared Anderson, who's never beaten anybody close to being a top 10 fighter, in the top 10, which I think is a big mistake. And it looks like, I'm not sure if this is a done deal, but he might be fighting Martin Bacoli pretty soon on the August 3rd show in LA. And if that takes place, I definitely favor Martin Bacoli to defeat Jared Anderson. It could be a close fight, but it'll be an interesting fight. So very interesting times. We've already had one postponement for Usyk versus Fury 2. They're saying Usyk had injuries, and so that's supposed to be on the December 21st Riyadh season show rather than on their October kickoff show. We'll see if that happens, because particularly when you're dealing with Fury, you can't really assume anything. I mean, fighters get hurt, especially as they age. Beterbiev is an example of that. And we do know fighters legitimately get hurt. But Fury has a long history of postponing fights, delaying fights, ducking fights. So we'll see if that actually takes place. I'm pretty skeptical that that's going to take place on December 21st, but it's certainly possible. So it's a very, very interesting time in the heavyweight division now. And you do have some young up-and-coming fighters around. And we're going to see actually what's next coming up. It's a very interesting time.
Yeah, I've been watching Pro Box with Paulie Malignaggi. Malignaggi is one of the commentators. That's a pretty good show. I saw some good fights on there. Malignaggi. I've never been able to pronounce his name. Even when he was fighting out of Wild Card, he was training with Freddie and Eric Brown. But he
started in Brooklyn too.
Yeah. So I saw some good prospects on there. That's a pretty good show. Yeah. If they keep up matchmaking the way they're doing. But all right. Well, look, that's a jam-packed edition right here, folks. You guys got our one and only Malissa Smith launching a brand new book, and it's a bestseller. It is a bestseller. Number 1 The Promise of Women's Boxing. You guys better pick that up on Amazon. So before we finish up, is there anything else, Eddie, you want to cover? Anything else you want to cover, Melissa, before we tell the people where they can find us?
Sure. I mean, I know we've got a lot to talk about the Olympics, but maybe
Yeah, let's save that for the next
we'll
episode.
save that for the next show because
Yeah.
there's just a lot going on,
Yeah,
and
it's
I
a
think
lot.
you know, Eddie had a lot of stuff on that as well, and
Yeah,
so we'll do that as the next show, I think.
absolutely. All right, Melissa, go ahead and tell the people where they can find you, my friend.
Sure, I am at Girl Boxing Now on across social media. A lot of just pretty much dealing in boxing on Twitter. And I have a very active Instagram account as well, and Facebook, and what else? Website, melissa-smith.com.
Yeah.
And or girlboxing.org. Still writing articles and so on. And of course, my new book. Very excited. You know, book launch coming up next week. You know, a lot of activity. I've been very, 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 very busy over the last few days, just tweeting and posting about the book and about people's reactions to it. So I'm really humbled by the support and the opportunity that I have to just use my platform for what I call my passion project, which is, you know, writing about women's boxing. So I thank you and Eddie for being so kind to me and letting me ramble on a bit today in our show. And I'm just really proud of the work, and I'm proud of the women I get to talk about.
Absolutely. We're proud of you, sis, for sure.
Sunny.
Right on. All right, Eddie, tell the people where they can find you, my friend.
Yeah, I made a decision. I've been kicking around for a while that I'm going to bring back, and have started to bring back on an occasional, irregular basis, my own podcast, No Holds Barred.
Yay!
And the first edition of the resuscitated one had, guess who was on it? Melissa.
That was a good first pitch.
It was awesome.
Got that. But there are also things that would be beyond the purview of this show that I would like to get some things done that are non-boxing things and some boxing things. So we're going to see. I don't have any regular schedule with that, but I hadn't really been able to do it for a while. And 2022 was medically not a good year for me. And I had to stop doing it then. And even I had slowed it down to, instead of doing original shows, I was just posting the audio of the WAAR Room. But, you know, I decided I'm going to do a few things here and there. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. So you could find the information on that, my website, eddiegoldman.com. You could go to my Patreon where I have the articles, and, you know, my patreon.com/Eddie Goldman, the No Holds Barred page, has the articles usually behind the paywall because you got to support it. But when I post this show and also the No Holds Barred podcast, those are free to listen to. So, and of course, that's an idea that, you know, if you like that, you sign up and pay, because these websites run by these fossils, misogynists, miscreants, criminals, and whatever are not going to post the kind of stuff that I'm doing anymore, even though I've written for almost every one of them in the past. So you could, again, patreon.com/Eddie Goldman. And I'm still on Twitter. There's no viable alternative, as messed up as that is and as unsustainable as it is under the clown running it. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm at NHB News on Twitter, and I still call it Twitter. So that's
everybody
where you can find.
Still calls it Twitter.
Yeah. One of the worst branding blunders in history.
Right. For real, for real. Well, did you guys know that there's a boxing Twitter community? It's over 5,000 strong. Did you guys? I just joined the other day because I saw it on my feed. Because now they have these little communities like Black Twitter. And
Did
they're
not know that. Would you
yeah,
send me
and
the
they're
link?
yeah,
I
I'll
never
send you
even
the
heard of that.
link. Yeah, so I'll send you guys a link when we're done here. But yeah, that's where we need to post our stuff. I was like, there's a boxing Twitter, literally a community of boxing Twitter, over 5,000 people on there. So that's a good thing. Well, folks, look, this has been a fantastic edition of the War Room. We call this Sports Justice Radio because we are talking independent journalism here, and we're not giving you the rehashed misinformation and regurgitated BS that is out there in the boxing news world. So you get good information here. You guys need to support the work that my two professional journalists are doing because I am a child of Roger Mayweather and I don't know shit compared to these two. I don't know shit about boxing. Okay, so we get the expert opinions and analysis, and please support us by hitting that like button, following us on Instagram and Twitter and all of those other places. I'm on Instagram. That's one of my favorite, and of course YouTube. So follow us, go to WAAR Sports, WAAR Sports.com. Follow me on Instagram at Fight Goddess One, because that's where I am, baby. All right, my beautiful people, it has been real. We love doing what we do. Until next time, peace, love, and